Hi, I'm Eleanor Meyerhofer, a native Californian, designer, and digital strategist. In October of 1999, a few years after graduating from design school, I flew from San Francisco to Munich with a fistful of Deutschmarks, a dial-up connection, and an extremely vague plan. 20-plus years later, after a 10-year stint at a global agency, freelancing, and launching 2 online businesses, I'm still here. Now I'm talking to other expat business owners to share knowledge, stories, and inspiration for other non-Germans running businesses in Germany. Okay. I'm going to start with what I always start with, which is like, who are you? Where are you from? And what's a 2-minute story of how you ended up in Germany?
Yeah. So I am Katie Rössler. I am a relationship strategist and counselor. And I ended up in Germany because I married a tall, handsome man with an accent. But a little more of the story is that he was doing his internship and his colleagues, who were my friends, were like, "Hey, this house is having a great cookout. You should come." And so he and the fellow interns came, and that's how we met. And that night, I invited him to a Coldplay concert, and the rest is history. No, we
Wow.
lived in the States together for 6 years, and then said, "Okay, it's time for us to try Germany." We said 3 to 5 years,
Mhm.
and the pandemic hit in that time. We're like, "Okay, well, we're here, so
Okay.
this is where we're staying."
That's right, because I met you through WEM, which we'll talk about later. But I was so excited. It was this Women Entrepreneurs Munich group, and they put on this great meetup in a great location in the Old Town. And it was like, what was it, February 15th or something?
Yeah, something. Yep.
20, yeah, and that was that. Okay, cool. So obviously you're from the States. You mentioned that.
Yep.
And tell us about what you do here, your business,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So by profession, I'm a licensed professional counselor. Moving here to Germany, my license isn't recognized and my schooling isn't fully recognized, which I find very silly, but that's how it is. Many of us go through that. So I had to really look at how I could still work here. And so as a coach or a counselor with the letter C, not therapist,
Mhm.
you learn the words and the vocabulary you can use, and you just make sure in your marketing strategy, you make it very clear, I am licensed and this is what I do. But I really like the term relationship strategist because it embodies a lot more of the work that I do with my clients. It's a lot more relationship skill teaching, emotional intelligence building, mentorship at times. And so I've sort of expanded what maybe I went to school for,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Marriage and family therapy into, okay, now I really work with high achieving couples who, are living abroad, whether both are, or it's for one of them, they're living abroad, the other, it's their home country. And they're couples that have been together for over 10 years, usually 15 to 20 years. And they're in that, I feel like roommates,
Mhm,
it just feels
mhm.
like resentment's building and it's just functional and it's like not exciting anymore. And as the kids get older and things are kind of like, I'd like to have a little spark back. And we got to work through some of those things that we said we'd work on that we didn't. And so I started growing my business online during the pandemic, of
Mhm.
course, and started developing courses and workshops and just finding ways to support couples in this season that's really difficult. I took a small little hiatus and worked in the grief space for a
Right.
while, which a lot of people go like, "Oh, well, what are you doing, grief or relationship work?" And I was like, It's all the same." So often I'm working on grief work in relationships because for me, grief isn't just about death. It's related to transitions in life and
Mhm.
when things don't go the way we thought they would, and we're having to sort of grieve the dream, the expectations, and that happens a lot in relationships. So in that time, I also, during the pandemic, wrote a book. I wrote my second book post-pandemic, started a podcast, just found different ways to reach people in the ways that they receive it best. Some people don't want to watch a video. They want to listen. Some people want to read versus take a course. And so for me, it was important to kind of diversify how I was reaching my clients, um, especially during that like 3-year time. Let's be honest, it was more like we're still kind of coming out of that craziness, but 4 or 5 year time of feeling like, I need support, but I'm afraid to ask for it.
Mhm. I wanna, go back to something you said earlier about how you talked to couples where one person is not in their home country and one person is.
Yeah.
Did you how did you find these people from the beginning? And were you, focusing only on couples in Germany? How did you, get the business off the ground and find your
So
ideal
this
client?
is the fun part of the story where I moved here not thinking I'd be able to work. So this is
Mhm,
2016. I'm pregnant with our second, so I'm really not going to be working anytime soon.
mhm,
And there are particular Facebook groups that are starting to develop, show up, and grow here in Munich. And of course, I joined them because they were made for moms in the beginning,
mhm,
for moms to connect. I'm like, yeah. And in that time, I also started a bullet journaling group for moms. And I had a group back in the States. I was very involved in a group for moms that was connected to our local church. So I brought that over and started that over here. And I just sort of built the community that I wanted. And by
mhm,
doing that, people learned about who I was
mhm,
and what I do. Um, and I started writing blogs for particular websites that were being built here in Munich for those communities of women, whether they
mhm,
be in health and fitness or in just community building, and sharing about the challenges couples face. Because we all know in those Facebook groups, people will share, "Hey, I'm having these problems. Hey, does
mm,
anybody have any advice?" And, for a couple years there when I wasn't sure how I was gonna work, I just answered them. And I shared openly and honestly from a professional standpoint, letting them know I'm not working, but here's
yeah,
what it
yeah,
is. So when the doors were ready to be open to the work I was doing, I'd already laid a foundation where referrals were quite easy and I would start getting tagged, and I still to this day get tagged in particular Facebook posts.
mhm,
Uh, People know my work, and I make sure to really build connections with those people who are referring me if they're not clients, just so that they know how much I appreciate, they're
mm,
taking the time, and usually they've listened to my podcast or they've joined one of my workshops. And so they know what I teach and they're able to sort of discern, is this the right
mhm,
context for what Katie works for in. But that's how I initially started to find people. I've started shifting now into doing some Facebook ads and really, getting on other people's podcasts or doing videos,
mhm,
Instagram lives and things like that. Just a way to start being seen a little bit more. But, really being able to zone in and say, I work with couples who are high achieving, who are living abroad or international or bicultural. That sort of came to me because I live in an international city. And
okay,
right. And they're going to refer their friends to me who live wherever, but are also similar. I call them triangles. They're not quite like their home country, which is considered like squares, and they live in a new country, which is considered a circle, and they change shape
mhm,
but they don't really connect in both places anymore as home.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
triangles find each other, right? We feel
yeah,
connected. So this is really, who I speak to and how I support them because I get it. I'm walking that right now.
okay. And this is a totally self-interested question also for a client. So your clientele, so if I understand you correctly, it's high achieving couples, but it could be Holland, it could be
Yeah.
Tokyo, it could be Southeast Asia, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, how your strategy for, finding podcasts to guest on,
Mhm.
do you look for, expat podcasts? Or, how did you figure out how to plug into that niche, basically?
Right. So I will pitch to expat podcasts, though I'm really mindful of what types of things they talk about because
Right.
sometimes they want to interview the couple, not have the specialist come and talk.
Uh-huh.
Totally fine.
Uh-huh.
Um, But I actually look more at what are the things that, because I mean, you and I, we don't listen to expat podcasts
Right.
all day long,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
else do we listen to?
Yeah.
What other things or topics are, of interest to us. So like the
Mhm.
women that I work with, if you've been in a relationship for 15 to 20 years, you're now in perimenopause. So I go and find those podcasts, they're talking about
Sorry.
perimenopause.
There was I think this is like on my side, and I am sorry. You said the
That's fine.
women I work with.
Mhm. So
Um,
the women I work with, because they've been in their relationship for 15, 20 years, they're in perimenopause.
mhm,
So I go and find the podcasts that are on those types of topics, and I share about the midlife crisis in our relationship and, just different things like the question, should I stay or should I go? How that's not really a scary question. It's an invitation to something
mhm,
greater. And, I go and pitch these focused areas to these types of podcasts. And, I've been probably now on over 80 podcasts. I have my own podcast for over 2 years. So I've figured out the pitch strategy. I really make sure to dial in on what is their message, what are they trying to teach, and making sure I blend what I'm going to say to match how they want, their brand, how
mhm,
they want to
mhm.
show up to their community. Having my own podcast helped me see that. Like, I don't want some random person that doesn't make sense in my
Right.
flow, but something that my people will be interested in. And I got a lot better too at starting to ask questions to podcasts as I was pitching myself, or if they reached out to me to kind of say, what's your audience?
Mhm.
Where are they located? Because honestly, if I just said expat couples or living abroad couples, I'd have a big struggle.
Yeah.
There's just so many different things they're listening to.
Yeah.
So I really had to find what are the other areas of interest, what are the other areas that are important. And,
Mhm,
I will work with I have a couple who's German. They're both
mhm,
German, but their
mhm,
English is excellent and they love working with me because
mhm,
they both have lived abroad. And
mhm,
so they know I have that open mindset too. So it's not that it has to just be them, but it makes sense when we're doing our marketing to find our ideal, and then when
right.
others come in, we can assess, yeah, you're a good fit too.
Yeah.
Yes, this would work, which is why I have my relationship game plan call is a 45-minute call for me to get to know them and them to get to know me and for me to really be able to see, okay, if we work together, here would be the game plan. Here's what
Mhm.
we would work on. And that's helped me sort of assess too who's a better fit.
So that's like your kind of discovery call?
Yeah.
I wanna talk about you're writing a book because I remember when you wrote that book, and I guess writing too. What was the motivation for writing a book? What was the process? And how do you feel it has or has not helped your business?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, I knew I always wanted to write a book. The
Mhm.
book was going to be a 3-generation book with my grandmother, my mom, and me. And then October 2018, my mom died, and we
Mhm.
never got to write that book. We didn't even start drafting it. We always talked about it, but I knew I still want to write a book.
Mhm.
So would it be with my grandmother and me? And then I was like, I don't know. And in the process of losing my mom, I also had 2 miscarriages. So I started journaling and I
Mm.
journal often. I write a lot, but I was noticing what I was journaling was a deep dive in what grief actually is, what I'm experiencing, how I have felt this way before, like when my parents divorced or moving internationally while pregnant and having to adjust. Like I realized there were so many nuances to grief that weren't being talked about. So I happened to just share a couple pages of the journal with a friend and was like, you know, "What do you think? Like, could I make this a book? Because I kind of feel like if I remove all of my personal stuff, there's something here." And she was like, "If you don't, I will be angry at you." So
Mhm.
I just sat down and started to compile all of it. I'm a big fan of mind mapping.
Mhm.
And then with a book, it's really important to like pull out the sticky notes, have a big blank wall and be like, here's the sections and here's the things that I want once you have your mind map. And then I found the writing process to be a lot easier once I had that structure and plan. Um, and even with the second book, I co-wrote that with Amy McCracken, and that was the same kind of thing. We mind mapped, we kind of gone, okay, and in these sections, here's the things we want to make sure we cover. Then you just fill in the paragraphs. And then it's like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's easy to do once you have the structure."
And did you like, is that like, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, I'd just Google, like, "How do you write a book?" And then did you, like, hire an editor, or did you just, like
Yeah, yeah. So I did hire an editor, the one who I co-wrote the book with, the second
Okay,
book with
okay,
Amy.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I hired her. I had a book cover designer, um, and how to start is really for me with that topic was we're all in a pandemic and we're all grieving the life that we don't have anymore, and we don't know when the
Mhm,
our normal life will come back and will it ever feel normal again.
mhm,
That's grief. So it's anticipatory grief. And so I was like, okay, well, the topic is very fresh. So
mhm.
there's not an issue of like, is this relevant?
Yeah.
It's very relevant. And that's always the question to ask yourself. Is the topic I want to teach about or write about relevant? What do you find yourself teaching on repeat that would be so much easier if you had it in a book format that you could
Mhm,
give as a gift to a new client that you
mhm,
could put out there to get new clients?
mhm,
Um, so with the initial stage, it wasn't this is to get clients. It was I got to put this book out. Like
mhm,
we all need it. Really, my intentions were we just need this.
mhm,
And so that's how the new face of grief was, released. Do I would I say that it helped? I would say it absolutely helped my current and future clients because they would get the book. I never
mhm,
sent it to them, but they would buy it as soon as they saw I had a book, and
mhm,
they would come to sessions going, "Oh my gosh, this chapter, this helped me. I did this exercise. I did
hmm,
these things," right? I had a lot of people because of the community I'd built here send it to friends, send it to family members. It became like the gift you give in times of bereavement, in times of crisis or challenges. Um, I find that, every once in a while, probably 2 or 3 times a year, I'll post about it on Facebook or Instagram, just reminding people the book is there. And if they, and maybe a testimonial that I've received from somebody who's read it in the last 6 months or so. And then I'll see an uptick in my sales.
mhm,
Do I see them then come and be a client? Not always. I do have a free audio chapter. The first chapter is an audio chapter that people can access. And I also have a workbook that's attached to the book that's digital. So once you get the book,
mhm.
you see the link, you go. And I also had a Spotify playlist. Like I went all in. Spotify
Okay.
music playlist for support in this phase kind of thing. So I kind of just put it out in different places, making sure the website to buy the book or get the free chapter was everywhere. I did a podcast tour because we weren't able to travel during that time.
Right.
And that was really helpful too. And I highly recommend that, especially nowadays, to just, if you're going to write a book, set it up like 6 months prior to the book is out to start pitching to podcasts, to share when the due date is. So they make sure that, or like when the publishing date is, so they make sure to put that episode out after. Or
Mhm,
if you have a freebie, like a free audio chapter, it could be before, but you need to be collecting those emails and you need to be keeping them warm. We're so excited. In 2 months, this book is going to be released.
mm,
Here's, help me vote on the cover image or what, things to just get
yeah.
people involved. Um, and then having that launch party, right? Like having a launch group and then having a launch party
What was a
just
launch group?
built. So the launch group is usually you try to get about between 30 to 50 people who will pre-read or skim the book enough to be able to share about it.
Uh-huh.
And then day of and that whole week, they're like, oh my God, this was my favorite quote. Oh, here's a picture of me reading the book, right? Like they're putting it all out on their social media and sharing it in their WhatsApp groups and things so that it helps with sort of that grassroots marketing. So you're not having to pay for ads or things like that. And then the party itself is you bring all those people in and anyone who's already bought the book or has been on your email list to come join the party. And that motivates them as well to want to go buy the book.
I think I've seen this happen, I'm realizing, with certain books, like, on LinkedIn and stuff, but that seems like a daunting task right there, getting 50 people to I mean, I'm
Yeah.
assuming it's, like, your, like, close friends, family, some of
Yes.
your audience, or
Exactly. Clients, people already on my email list. You just put out a call to action. Hey, I've got this book coming out. It's focused on this. Would love to have you on my launch team. Let me know if, this is what's expected. Bing, bing, bing. Keep it
Mhm.
simple. Let me know if you're interested. And you do like 50 because probably 10 to 15 actually do what you've asked.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
so
Like it's
okay,
not
okay.
always, unless
Yeah,
you've built such a like
yeah.
super fans,
Okay.
people aren't going to read the book. They're going to
Yeah.
forget. They're going to feel
Yeah.
weird posting it all of a sudden because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't really like to promote things.
Yeah.
That becomes the
Okay.
challenge. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So conversion. Okay. So it's also, it sounds like it's a companion in your counseling practice.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, it's a marketing tool, but it's also people come in already with a foundation knowing what you're
Right.
doing.
Right.
Did you ever, I mean, okay, so from what you said about the German couple you work with, you obviously work in English. Did you ever entertain the idea of getting German credentials? As I know a friend of mine, she's a neighbor, she's also American, she's also a
Hmm.
therapist, she's a child therapist. She did that whole thing.
Hmm.
Um, did you ever consider it or just
I did. I thought very heavily about it because one, I could be a Heilpraktikerin, but only
Mhm,
private insurance would cover me. And
mhm.
honestly, couples therapy isn't covered by any, like
Yeah,
that's just
yeah,
not covered in the States, not covered by insurance. At least it didn't used to be. I don't know if I
okay.
doubt they changed it.
Really?
Family
It's
therapy is an
okay,
individual with someone in the, there's ways as
okay.
therapists we know how to like wiggle around it.
Mhm,
Um, but here I know, that couples therapy, getting it covered anyways can be a challenge. So I thought about doing, going and doing the test to be a Heilpraktikerin. And I was like, uh, t- it was an ego thing, to be
mhm,
honest.
yeah, yeah,
Like I have 6 years of education, 3 years of residency, took two major tests for certification and license. Like I didn't want
what
to go
yeah,
and take a
yeah,
test
yeah,
to be
yeah,
in the mix, in the pool
yeah.
of people that I was like, "Oh, like, y'all didn't do this much work to do what
Well,
you
and
do."
also you
So
have to get a Kassensitz and all of this, and it's just a different system
yeah,
so far
it is
so
a
far
different
as I
system.
understand.
Yeah.
I have a couple of, or one right now, a therapist. She's in California, or she's licensed in California, but she
Mhm.
actually lives in Mexico. Um, I mean, with your, could you? What you're from? I always forget which one of the
I'm licensed in Virginia.
or Virginia. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm so sorry. Uh, Could you, not that you wanted to do this, but
right.
can you help people in Virginia remotely?
So, this is a blurred line. Imma be careful
Okay,
because your friend's
okay,
doing it.
okay,
State by state, they have different rules,
okay,
right?
okay.
And health insurance companies, if you're billing health insurance companies, there are rules.
Mhm,
But, you know, everybody does their own. They know the rules. They decide if
mhm,
they want to follow them or not. I know in some states, as long as the client is living and actively doing the session in that state, some it's that you have to be in that state. The client could be traveling. A lot of people just switch to a pay out of pocket, you know,
mhm,
coaching
mhm,
or consulting session type
mhm,
call
mhm,
so that that covers them. But it's in America, it's different state to state. So
mhm.
that piece, uh, to be honest, running a private practice for 3 years in the States, I did not really want to go back to that because it is so much paperwork with health insurance. It is so much
Right,
being on the phone and fighting charges. And I'm over here internationally. So
yeah,
how am I going to like, hey, Etna, let's talk for 2 hours to
yeah,
figure out, oh, we messed this up, or no, we need this document, and be like, no, I'm not doing this. So it didn't make sense. And honestly, I haven't had a struggle. My marketing is really to people who can afford what I do.
yeah,
And so that piece was never something that I ran into. I absolutely have people say, your prices are too high. I absolutely have people say, like, I'd rather find health insurance. Totally fine. There's a lot of us in Munich. There's a lot of us internationally that will work with you.
yeah,
So it's about finding the right fit. For me, working with high income earners was never such a specific thing, but if you invest, you're gonna
mm,
put the work into it.
mm, mhm,
And if you don't invest or you do a lower investment, it's much easier to be like, "I don't really care," or, "Yeah, whatever, I did the homework." "No, I didn't do the homework, I keep
yeah,
forgetting, I don't care."
yeah,
I wanted the people who were like, "We put a chunk in this, we are going to improve our relationship
yeah,
immediately." Like, this is like, I'm gonna put the work into this. And that is, high achieving couples, they don't like to fail.
mhm,
They like their gold stars every session, and that was really important as well.
okay. Yeah, I think also having a niche, um yeah, my sister she's based in California. She has an advanced degree, I think, at MSc, and she is not licensed, but she went out as a coach and she coaches like queer polyamory
Mhm.
people. I mean, she does other things too, but she sort of realized it really wasn't worth it for her to get her license because she was just doing fine. So I'm putting that in context for people that come here with their qualifications not recognized.
Yes.
Maybe, I mean, and that is really, I mean, I don't have that problem with what I do, but we had um a woman at our Eltern initiative who is an amazing, amazing art teacher, and she's originally from Russia, but she had worked in the UK, like doing like childhood art education. And Bavaria just was like, nope, you got to start from the beginning. And why?
Yeah.
So I just, for anybody, if you can figure out a way to work around and like communicate through your marketing and branding that you have credentials, and aside from that, you have the skills, do so. I mean, obviously, if you're like doing brain surgery or whatever, you
Right,
can't do that.
different.
But
Yeah, and
yeah.
I don't diagnose anymore, right? So, like, those types of things that you really need to have a licensed and trained professional in that country,
Mhm.
I don't do that anymore. I don't see the purpose in it because I'm working on the relationship health,
Mhm.
and I'm able to pick out, like, "Hey, I think, there's some generalized anxiety or I'm noticing bipolar, um, tendencies," but then I will refer them, right? Like, I know then my wheelhouse and I stay out of the extreme
Mhm.
addictions, extreme mental health issues, because that's not what I want to be working with anyways. I wanna
Mhm.
work on rebuilding your relationship.
Mhm. Mhm. Cool. I wanna go back to another thing you said, which was, the Facebook groups and all of the communities you were in. You are a community builder. That's, like, clear to me. Like, we know each other personally and
Yeah.
professionally. Um, you started a group called Women Entrepreneurs in Munich. You were one of the founders. Can you tell me about how that came about? And
Yeah. So I kinda put a call to action in a small business, you know, owners group here locally in Munich and was like, "Can we start meeting in person?" And this was 2019, and all of the admins and moderators of the group were like, either, "We're so burnt out, we've got too much on our plate, like, do you wanna take over?" And I was like, "Okay, not really what I had in mind, but why not?" Like, create what you want,
Yeah.
basically. And so I then put a call to action in the group of, "I'd really like to build this up. Who would like to come and help?" And in that group, several women said yes. Not all of them stuck around to really build it. But we started meeting, we started brainstorming. We had somebody who did the branding for it and came
Mhm.
up with the logo. And I was like, Women Entrepreneurs of Munich, that's gonna be searchable, that's easy.
Mhm.
Um, and it's funny because when I think about the first version of it that we really wanted, it was about education, it was about networking, and it really was about, bringing a community together that tends to be overlooked because
Mhm.
many of us are, like, highly skilled, and we're having to start a business because we can't do the work we did before,
Right.
or we're having to start from scratch, and
Mhm.
you just don't wanna feel so alone.
Mhm.
So it was just like, how can we just give that moral support of this?
Yeah.
And yeah, so we launched it in July of 2019. It was just primarily a Facebook group. We started meeting in person once a month for workshops, educating people. It was basically allowing these women who had these skill sets to start to lead workshops and to teach again so they could see, okay, first, let me get out there in front of other people talking about
Mhm.
what I know, but I feel like isn't, recognized here. And second, let me build that network because now I'm an expert that
Mhm.
people are going to call and email and reach out
Mhm.
to. And that really spoke to me because when I first had my daughter and I sold my private practice, I was a part of that moms group connected to our church and was in a leadership. I wasn't in a leadership role yet, but I did the following year. And one of the women in the leadership role said, you're 7 weeks out. I want you to come and teach about like emotional intelligence or something like that.
Mhm.
And I was like, what? And she's like, I promise. And she was a mom of 3. So she was like,
Mhm.
you
Okay.
just need to come. You can come and talk and,
Mhm.
and, use that part of your brain again. And I was like, okay. And I did. And it really was such a big reminder that even though, whether we become a mom, whether we
Mhm.
move, whether we change
Mhm.
careers, the imposter syndrome has to go out the door. We still have strengths and skill sets.
Mhm.
And so I wanted women to be able to come and do workshops, to come and speak and to see they are still relevant. They still have their education, like they're still capable.
Mhm.
So we started having that. We had meetups. It was just sort of fun. And we had this great retreat planned, like a 1-day sort of conference
Mhm.
retreat at Munich Business School. We were so excited. We were partnering up with them. We had speakers, we had everything lined up. And then the pandemic
I
happened.
remember this.
And it was gonna be that April, right?
Counting.
And everything in
Yeah.
March shut down, and
Yeah.
it was like, "Okay." So then we thought, "Do we move the whole thing online?" And it's like, "No, actually, everyone's in crisis mode." Like,
Yeah.
the last thing they need is like, "Let's talk about your branding and business
Yeah.
development," and,
Yeah.
like, now it's
Yeah.
just like, "How do we
To
survive?"
survive. Yeah.
So we moved everything back into that Facebook group, which is where it was before,
Mhm. Mhm.
and started having experts come each week and teach Monday through Friday a particular small bite-sized topic so
Mhm.
that the women still felt like they're working on their business, even if they couldn't practice what they were doing because of the pandemic, they could still be learning. We had everything from like how to take a great selfie for your
Mhm.
Instagram, how to start, hey, you got time to work on your branding. It's more than just color and font. Like how
Yeah.
to do this on your own, things like that. It was really fascinating to just hear, again, different people's perspectives and their education. And one of the things that I love, and I know this is one of my skill sets, is connecting people. Like if I know someone's got a skill set and I'm like, ooh, you would be able to help this person, or the
Mhm.
two of you would brainstorm really well together, or things like that. And because of that, our leadership team was able to grow a bit because I was like, this person's gonna be really good at this. Like let's pull them in. So when it was time for me to step back, because I really am a believer that the things we build, we don't always have to continue. It
Mhm.
is also about letting that fresh blood come in and bring a whole new sense of life to it and go in different directions. Because I was no longer kind of a newer business owner. I had been working long enough. I had, by that point, our third daughter, so 3 kids, and I needed to just focus on my business development and not on all the other things because I knew the ball, it's for me, it's a rubber ball, right? Always,
Mhm.
I like to talk about juggling glass balls and rubber balls.
Mhm.
WEM was a rubber ball. I didn't need to juggle it
Mhm.
anymore, but I was
Mhm.
treating it like glass and it was
Mhm.
taking time away from things that I love.
Mhm.
So it was time to drop that, but I made sure there was like a support team in place to do that work.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's been this great organization, but I agree with you. I have always been the person who build it so that I have what I want. I moved every 2 to 3 years as a military kid, so I knew sometimes you can't always find what you want. You
Mhm.
do have to actually say, "Anybody else like bullet journaling? Great,
Yeah.
let's do it. We're gonna meet once a month, the beginning
Yeah.
of the month, and fill out our things with our rulers and pens and, like, just have community because
Yeah.
we need to feel less alone."
Yeah. I did not know you this bullet journaling, this is a new thing. I'm gonna, like, corner you and be like, "Tell me everything, because 'cause I've always been intrigued, and I bounce around between analog and digital.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say that, WEM helped me a lot because at that time it was 2019, so I had a two-year-old. I was already past, like, ever having a full-time job again. I didn't wanna do that, but I was contracting. So for
Mhm.
me, it was like, I'm just gonna contract at agencies, but I was like, I don't wanna do that. I worked with a good friend who was also in WEM who was had an HR background, and I was like, we were doing my LinkedIn, and I was like, I don't want these
Yeah.
jobs. I don't want to, like, go in and be on a UX team. So I was like, I'm gonna start a business. It was actually a very good time to start doing what I was doing, but I was figuring out, like, a lot of the business side because it's this
Mhm.
whole difference, like, client acquisition and, like, what are you talking about? So WEM was a great platform I think I did a thing on digital transformation.
Mhm.
Like while you're stuck in an apartment and cooking and cleaning and caring, and it was a real helpful release to like, "Ooh, I can do," you like you say, use that part of my brain and
Yes.
have like a community there. So I was very grateful for that. Um, um, so you are doing this relationship strategy work, and is there any kind of project that you're excited about right now beyond that? Like, do you have a community, another book? What's going on?
Yeah, I am really excited. So, as I shared, like the women who are in those relationships are going through perimenopause and living abroad. So
Mhm,
they're like navigating a healthcare system that's maybe doesn't support when they go, "Hey, I'm having these symptoms," or they're trying to, figure out this season of their lives, which is very roller coaster like.
mhm,
And it's kind of lonely because depending on where you live and what country you're in, and here we're talking about Germany, people don't always wanna talk about these things. They're not always gonna be sharing about it and open.
mhm,
And I've found German women in particular are a little like, not in like,
mhm,
"No, I don't know." So, I'm building a community called the Reconnection Space for these women that I've been interacting with, and just a space where I'm gonna invite experts to come in and talk to us. I'm gonna be teaching just about some of the emotional regulation and mindset, and because I think it's a really it's one part scary time, it's another part like everything's so discombobulated that we're like in this identity crisis, and I want to just give everybody that like platform, but also structure to like it's okay to fall apart, but here's where it's guiding you to.
mhm,
So that's something I'm really excited about. It's the first time I'll be creating a group like this. I've done smaller groups. I've done like book club type groups where like I taught in line with a book we were learning from. And I've led like grief workshops that took, a couple of weeks to teach all of the things. But in particular, this is gonna be a 6-month group where it's very intimate and very like I said, it's just a supportive space where we can laugh together, we can cry together. So that's opening in September, and that's something I'm really, really passionate about, is just getting that off the ground going and really testing it out, right? Often business is trial and error.
yeah.
You know me, like, as soon as I have an idea, I test it out like 50 times, and then I go, "This worked, this didn't." And so this is something I've been sitting on and really trying to get going and going like, "Okay, the fall is a good time. Let's jump in." Um, and really start to support more people in a format like a group format.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, just the, like, stack you're using? Are you using, like, a community platform? Is it Zoom calls? Is it a Slack group? Like, how have you put it together? Because there's a million different ways you can do that.
Yeah. So Zoom calls, I use MemberVault as the platform for all my
Okay.
programs, courses, videos,
Mhm.
and things. I use SoundCloud for audio. Then I just embed that into MemberVault. For the videos, I use Vimeo or Vimeo,
Yeah,
however
yeah,
you
okay,
pronounce it.
yeah,
Wherever you're from, you pronounce it differently.
yeah,
Because I don't like YouTube being able to, even if you put it
yeah,
on private,
yeah, okay.
it links to too many other things. And then for the private podcasts that the community will get to have, I use Hello Audio. And with that, you can do a private feed where they just get access to the RSS code or
Mhm.
straight into Apple. Unfortunately, it's not
It
linked to
doesn't work with
Spotify yet.
Spotify, yeah, because 'cause I'm on some of those
Doesn't.
private things, and I
Yep.
don't know why they don't do that. It's so annoying.
Right? Yeah, I think Spotify has its thoughts and feelings,
Yeah,
and I think they're
yeah,
working that out. But,
yeah.
so that's the route I'm taking. So, like, this summer, the way I'm nurturing these women until the group opens is through a private podcast series called Hormones and Holy Shit Moments. And
Mhm.
so every week, it's sort of like instead of email blasting them like
Yeah.
here, 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 it shows up in their podcast feed as a new podcast episode, but it's not just for anyone to find or listen to. I can tell the people who registered for this, they're listening to it,
Mhm.
they're interested, and I can then nurture them even deeper. So it's with Hello Audio, you can collect their emails. Or you just give them the link if you don't want to collect emails, but you're constantly nurturing them to the
Mhm.
call, to the, whatever.
Mhm.
Like I'm gonna have think it's August 19th. Let me look. August 19th, I'm having a pause party, a
Okay.
perimenopause party online, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to talk about that on the podcast. I'm going to email, like I'm going to be putting it in different places to sort of build that community, but having the different platforms allows the different spaces. And then I also created, which my mentor uses too, a private Instagram group instead of a private Facebook group because so
Hmm.
many of us are on Instagram and it's just a space where you can like answer each, tile on your profile kind of thing
Mhm.
is a question or a way to interact.
Mhm.
And it gives a space to do that without feeling like you're just in another Facebook group.
Okay, interesting. And now people also have WhatsApp communities.
Yeah.
It's also yeah, there's all kinds of things. Okay, so wait, just quickly on the Instagram, is it like the close friends? Do you make like a close friends group or it's some other thing?
No, so you just make a private page where people have to request to join. So then you can see. And when they join, you then ask to follow them too. So then I have, let's say I get 30 women in that. I get to
Mhm.
closely interact with them and I get to
On
closely be a
Instagram.
part on Instagram.
On Instagram.
I get to write them. So it's not to be searchable. It's not, usually try to keep it
Okay.
open so your posts are
Yeah.
seen. I want to continue to nurture these people, these women where they are.
Mm.
And if they're on Instagram and they're following me, this private account, when I post something, when I share a story, usually when I share a story, because stories are seen a lot more, if they're interested, they can go and look. But that's only 30 women or so. Then I need to write privately and be like, hey, how are you? How's the summer going? Oh my God, I love that picture of you and your kid.
Mhm.
Which is my authentic way of being. I'm very social, very extrovert.
Yeah,
So I'm like,
yeah.
how can I just bring a smaller group in rather than the, almost 2,000 I have on my bigger Instagram where I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't want to write every single one of you. I care
Yeah,
about each of you,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
just don't
yeah,
have the
yeah,
capacity. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, interesting. I didn't even know that was a possibility. But that's just that is built onto your existing account. It's not a new Instagram account.
Right. Right. So you can
Hmm.
just say, I want to have a new handle and it's
Yeah.
just a separate account. Like I log in one place and I have all the
Okay.
different ones.
Cool. Well, then let's bring it home. Let's land the plane. I would like to know if you would do anything differently if you started all over again.
I would have started my podcast back when I wanted to start a podcast,
Okay.
which would have been, I guess, 2018 is when I wanted to start the podcast. I would have done it back then. Just
Okay.
because I now know the growth that had I started back then
Mhm.
would have occurred. I know how low the cost would have been back then too versus now when, things are a little more like, oh, they want it to be a certain way. And like, I know my perfectionistic style now.
Mhm.
But back then I would have been so, again, jump into it. Let's just try it. Let's
Mhm.
go.
Mhm.
There probably would have been like 10 different iterations and rebrandings, but who cares? But that would have been a platform where people would already have been finding me a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
And a big reason I didn't do that is my partner he's also an entrepreneur and he is very like, what's the ROI? What's the,
Mhm.
what cost? How much time is it going to take? All of this stuff. And I just kind of blinked because I was like, I just love the idea of starting a podcast.
Okay.
Now I get it from a business standpoint. But then I was like, I just want to do it.
Do you think I mean, we both love our German husbands, but I find this to be a very cultural tendency. My husband is not an entrepreneur, but I do think that is an American tendency to just say, "Hey, let's try it. We can do it." La, la, la. And the German tendency, there's not it's just different ways of being, but it's to be like, why exactly, why and this and that. It's like, I don't know, we're gonna find out. And sometimes I feel like it can really throw a wet blanket on all your ideas. And sometimes it's good because it does force you to think through things that you're like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe you should think through before. But I find that very much to be a cultural tendency.
Absolutely. It deflates your balloon, right? You
Yeah.
come in with like, I'm so excited. And they're like, here's 50 questions. You need to answer all of these before you're going to get my approval. And it's like, I don't
Yeah.
need your approval, but now I
Yeah.
feel like I do.
Yeah.
I teach this with the couples I work with because it isn't, yes, American German, but there are many cultures. And I think
Mhm.
women who come over here to build a business have excitement. We hear the things going on, we get all
Mhm.
excited. And yes, if you're married to a German partner who isn't aligned in that way, then you're going to get the Excel spreadsheet and the 20 questions and say, what's the plan? And last week you had a different idea. So why this week is it this idea?
Yeah.
They like the stability. They like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
will benefit me in some way and I'll see it short term. But I will say I've met a couple German men who are they're the good idea makers. They're like,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, that's amazing." And their
Mhm.
partner who's from a different country is the one who's like, "Okay, I'm going to need like a 5-point plan. Give me the
Mhm.
PowerPoint." Like I can't. So I think
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a personality
Yeah.
difference,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's a high concentration of Excel spreadsheet people here who
Yeah.
like the plan.
Good way to put it. So, yeah, final question, we can segue into it from that. Um, what, in your view, have been the pros of being an online entrepreneur in Germany, and what have been we'll start with the cons and end with the pros.
Yeah. What are the cons? I don't know. I think a con for me energetically and time and money is having to learn how to be in the online world,
Mhm.
marketing, sales, all. I mean, when you have a private practice,
Mhm.
it's referrals. It's, in the States, you're on psychologytoday.com.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
People search for you. You've
Yeah.
got health insurance. I didn't need to market. I mean, I connected with the right schools and they just sent their kids to me. And I
Mhm.
was connected to the military. So they sent their families to me. I didn't have to do any work. So I would say that the yuck for me that was sort of the con of going online is having to just learn business in a whole different way, marketing, sales, all the platforms,
Mhm.
and it's just so many bells and whistles, and there's always shiny object syndrome.
Yes.
It makes it really hard, so I'd say that's a big con.
Okay.
Um, Pro, I work with people in Japan, Dubai, Canada, the
Yeah.
States, Netherlands, right? Like, France, Germany. I work with people all over the world. Not many people can say that in their regular jobs that they know exactly who they're impacting. Um, that is amazing to be able to put out a book, to have courses online, to have a
Mhm.
podcast, and to reach ears that I would have never done if I was just sitting in a private practice.
Mhm.
To me, that's legacy work.
Mhm.
Being online has built my legacy work beyond what I could have done just from my own therapy chair.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks for coming on, Katie. Where can people find you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, katie.rössler, or my website, katierössler.com. And if you've got questions about building community, podcasts, book writing and stuff, reach out. And find me on LinkedIn too.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where I hang out. And Rössler, you have an umlaut on the O on Instagram.
I
Could
do
you
not have it on Instagram, but on LinkedIn it is there. But you can search Katie RO and immediately show up. There's
Okay.
not many of us.
Okay. Great. Well, good to talk to you and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. You can find this and all other Germany Expat Business Show podcasts at thegermanylist.de. Bye.